right, Matt Kenseth, thank you very much for coming. You don't have to do these anymore. You know that, right?
You tell me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little
After I
late.
invited you. Well, then why are you here, man? Why are you here?
I said I got free coffee.
That's it.
I was going to make you buy me lunch afterwards, possibly.
Okay, we can do that for sure. Okay, I start these, especially with guys like you. I grew up in a sport. Obviously, my dad and my granddad. How did you get into racing?
Guys like me.
Yeah, guys like you.
I'm just wondering who that would be. I feel bad for those
guys like you that your granddad didn't race or your dad, you know. But how did you get interested in racing and get into racing?
Well, my dad had 3 brothers, and they all raced out at the local short track, Jefferson, Wisconsin. And we used to go watch all the time, and I was always fascinated by, I guess when I turned 13, my dad, after the final race, went back to the track and we bought a car. So that's how we started. We just unloaded the car in our garage and didn't have any tools, didn't know how to work on it, didn't know anything. And he pretty much tasked me into figuring all that out. And so I started working on his cars, and that's how we got involved in it.
So you're just at the racetrack and you say, okay, season's over, let's buy a car.
I didn't say that. We were actually driving home, and I never dreamed, because my dad was 45 at the time, I would say. We're about halfway home, and he does a U-turn. I'm like, where are you going? He goes, we're going back to the track to try to buy this guy's race car. He's like, I don't want him to take it home. I don't trust that. I want just how it came off the track. I want him to drop it off at our house tonight if he's going to sell it to me. So we went back, and he bought a car, and the guy dropped it off. They were still in the pits all hanging out, and he went over and rolled it into our garage, and that's how we started.
Had you ever raced anything before that, like karts or motorcycles or anything?
No, I have not. So for today's standards, I was really late with everything. So I didn't drive anything. I probably wasn't quite 16 yet. They used to have an open practice day at Columbus 151 Speedway, which isn't there anymore, up by Madison, a little quarter-mile track. And my dad used to go practice on Wednesdays, and you could kind of do what you want. Nobody was paying much attention. So he'd let me get in a car and just run a few laps here and there when I was probably 14, 15. But I didn't get a race car until I was 16, and started racing like in July of the year when I turned 16.
So you just turned 16. You'd run a few laps at 14 or 15 and just jumped in a car and started racing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got my dad's cars ready, and he bought me this old 81 Camaro. So it'd be like the late model division at Columbus Speedway, and won to feature our third night out, which was pretty cool. It's funny, I bring this up in a lot of interviews, and I keep forgetting to look for it. But my dad was actually videotaping that thing with like a old VHS video recorder that you could barely lift. It was like that big. But yeah, that's when I started.
You know, I've always said that for stock car racing, there's the Southeast and there's Wisconsin. And those are the two hotbeds. You know,
Yeah.
you'll have midgets and sprint cars in one area and drag cars in another area, but that was where stock car racing was. What driver did you look up to that had come the same route that you were basically taking?
Oh man, that's a tough one to answer. So I mean, I didn't really have any NASCAR stuff on my mind because as a kid, we never really traveled as a family, never really went anywhere. NASCAR at the time seemed, a million miles away. It seemed like it was in a different world. It seemed so far away, it didn't seem like anything. Of course, Quickie made it down, and Trickle ended up, making it down after Bobby got hurt, and Trickle was pretty old at the time, I think, when he moved down. So that was neat to kind of see those guys make it, but honestly, I don't know that was ever on my mind until much, much later, probably at least the mid-90s, until I got to come down here and run a couple all-pro races, things like that.
Everybody I talk to, there's always that one moment when the money gets thin, the success doesn't come, and they think, is this really what I should be doing? And that little doubt enters your mind. Did you ever have that moment where you said, maybe this just isn't going to work and I need to go do something else?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I remember it like yesterday. So it was after the 92 season. Didn't run very good. Engines ran terrible, blew up all the time, didn't have any power, and we couldn't really afford to do anything else, and weren't sure if it was, was it me, was it the cars, was it the engines? I met a man named Rick Kipley, and he was building drag racing engines at the time, and he was really into that. He had this little engine shop up in Sauk City, Wisconsin. So anyway, we talked to him, and he put a deal together with me where we could just pay for parts, and he put together an engine for me. And I've said this a lot, but I mean it. He saved my career, honestly. So Dad and I couldn't really afford much more than that at the time. It was expensive to get, and he built me that new engine for the next year, and we went out to Madison where we could barely make the feature, and just started winning all the time.
But then you come south. At some point in time, you come south. You're hooked up with Carl Wagner.
Yeah.
I loved Carl, man. I mean, he built some engines for Adam and did some stuff with him. How did you make the Carl Wagner connection and come south? Because that was a mixture of different types of racing.
So I, from the year that I drove for Carl and all the years I'd raced in Wisconsin, and even after racing, I don't think I ever really connected with him. I could never figure that guy out. But Carl, as you know, he had a way about him where he liked to hit everybody in a certain area where guys don't like to be hit. And besides the painful part of it, it drove me crazy. Nobody watches us, right? I can tell this story.
Yeah, you can tell it.
So he would do it all the time, and it would make me crazy, right? And I'm just like, I'd get mad, but what am I going to do, right? So one day he was in the bathroom, and there was a big gap under the door. There was this big bathroom in our shop, and he would go in there for a long time. And so anyway, I just decided to put a stop to it one day. I kept asking him to quit hitting me there, and he wouldn't do it. It was just his thing, right? Like, he'd just walk by people and wham. So I took a whole thing full of Black Cat firecrackers, and I lit them and threw them under the door while he was in the bathroom. And I will say that he was not very impressed. I did not get fired, but I never got hit again after that either, ever. And he was still in there for like 3 or 4 minutes, and he opened the door and it looked like a Cheech and Chong movie, man. It was just full of smoke, and he was mad. He never said anything, but I guess he was mad just by the look on his face. So that was pretty funny.
This is for the lead.
Come on. There's your first donut on Tony Stewart. You can see that 17 there. Matt Kenseth on the inside.
Let's go to Rockingham, because at that time, and I want everybody to understand what this team was. This wasn't Hendrick Motorsports.
Look at this. He gives him a little assistance.
He's got it. He's got it. To the inside. He's going to get him. He's going to get him. Matt Kenseth wins it on the straightaway. He got him. Matt Kenseth for Robbie Reiser's team with no sponsor on the back.
Robbie Reiser was not Hendrick Motorsports. It wasn't, the teams that we see now in the Xfinity Series. This was a Busch team running a Busch schedule, and Cup guys would come into it. Mm-hmm. But how many guys did y'all have? You're talking about not having enough sponsorship. You're talking about them. How many guys worked there?
Yeah, it was amazing what Robbie and John, too, really did with that team. I can't remember how many guys were working there. I think it was 7. But every person that went there, believe this or not, went over the wall. Robbie was carrying tires. He carried front tires for me. From being the crew chief, jump off the box and go carry tires. Everybody had a role. Robbie built this old pit stop car, and we go practice pit stops, since a lot of people weren't really doing that at the time. They didn't have a very big budget, but he just made it happen by working harder than everybody.
Matt Kenseth wins for the 3rd time. Robbie Reiser with the salute.
When did that Roush relationship start for you? Because
Well,
you're still over here at Robbie's at the time, right?
Yeah, it
Driving
kind
for
of
him.
started pretty early, and
Yeah.
when Mark came and talked to me, at first thing I did was went and talked to Robbie, and Robbie and John were always like so incredibly supportive. And they were like, man, if you get an opportunity to go there and test and hang out and learn things and eventually go over there and race, I mean, that's part of it, man. We want you to have success. So there's a lot of interesting things that happened there, but they gave me that chance, and there's a lot of other offers between then and when I had a chance to actually finally go race a Cup car with him. But we kind of stayed true to the plan, and Robbie got to move up a lot of his guys, with us over to the Cup side together. We've never done that before, so it worked out really well for all of us.
All right, so let's jump to filling in for Bill Elliott, because that's the one that race at Dover really, for a lot of people, put you on the map.
And look at that move by Kenseth. He and Rusty Wallace scrambling for 5th.
He wants that position very bad as you see him coming off turn 2.
This is your first Winston Cup start. Congratulations, an outstanding effort, 6th place.
Yeah, we ran pretty good. The McDonald's Ford, handled really good all day. I'm glad we got a good run for the Bill Elliott number 94 car, and I hope they're doing all right at home.
We talk about it all the time that you can be the greatest race car driver in the world somewhere out in Iowa, but until you get in front of Cup guys, and those people see you, then you're off the radar screen. But that run, how did that come about? Bill had a family thing.
Yeah.
So we need you, and we want you, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I was already at the racetrack. It was, so I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday. And I can't remember exactly if it was Joe Groney or Mike Bean. But that was a fun weekend. I mean, it was unfortunate circumstances, obviously, for Bill to have to go home for his father passing away. But for me, I didn't have any time to think about it, to worry about it, to stress. But like, it was so like low stress and so much fun.
Yeah, I worked with Mike when Mike was my first crew chief. When I started, he came to work at Pinner.
I didn't think he was that old.
Yes, sorry, we're all that old. But it was funny because it was always
awesome.
low key.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I find two things fascinating though about that. Is number one, it happened so quick.
Yeah.
It's a 20-minute deal. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you went and asked Mark. Was Mark the mouthpiece? Was he? Well, I mean, was he your representative?
I shouldn't say it like that. They might have went and asked Jack.
Yeah.
Kind of. I think Mark took a special interest in me, so
Yeah.
he was always talking to me, and like he, for sure communicated through him, probably more than just necessarily going to Jack.
That would have been what year? 98?
September 98.
99?
Yeah.
98.
98, yeah.
Okay, so then you ran a few races in 99. Mm-hmm. But those were for Jack, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
If we go back to the Busch Series, and you raced against Dale Jr.
Now we're going back again?
No, yeah, wait a minute.
All right.
So you go back to the Busch Series, you raced against Dale Jr. and those guys, but they moved to the Cup Series about the same time you did. It was almost like Dale Jr. is Rookie of the Year. We're anointing him already. The focus being on him a lot that year. You went out and won at Charlotte. Oh my God, that's the Coca-Cola 600. It's a huge race.
Yeah.
And just quietly got it done with top fives and top tens and put together a great year for a rookie.
This is great. This is Matter. He's earned it, and they're going to win a bunch more of them.
Matt Kenseth now continues to lead the rookie battle.
Is it easier to work sometimes when the focus is not on you? You know what I'm saying? When you're like, I always used to tell people magic happens in the shadows. You know what I mean? If the light's shining somewhere else, you can do some.
Well, we're still about racing, right?
Yeah, we're still talking about
Okay.
racing. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, because to go that early in your rookie season and win a race was a huge deal.
Well, Junior won before I did. He won at Texas in April. At the time, sometimes you would maybe get, a little irritated if you happened to be outrunning him at the time and maybe you got all attention and stuff. But most of the time, it really didn't. I never really wanted the attention to start with, or ever really craved it, and I'm not sure why I'm here right now, except for I'm really fond of you. So I never really craved that, and you're right, like it was so popular then, and there were so many people at the track every week, and they were just swarming him, and he was so popular, and I just know that at times that didn't lead to happiness for him. Like I remember driving home from Darlington one time with him and went into Wendy's to get a sandwich, and there's like everybody's just swarming him. It was like, I was Dale Jr., and like it's like, man, I don't know that would be that fun. So anyway, and you're right. Like when all attention is somewhere else, it's much easier to be focused on doing your job and being on the track and not having all those distractions.
Kent is going to try to block him.
Jarrett going for two in a row. Matt Kenseth leads it. Jarrett looks low. No.
We jump ahead a little bit to 2002, and you have a good year. You win 5 races, but when you look at the year, it's like up, down. There's no consistency to it at all. But you come in 2003, you are Mr. Consistency, and you end up winning the championship. And you lead the points from, I think, the 3rd race all the way to the end, just the whole season. I mean, you had 20 top 5s, which was unheard of at that time.
Yeah.
You clinched championship with a race to go.
Matt Kenseth comes to the line, finishing 4th, and Matt Kenseth is the 2003 NASCAR Winston Cup Series champion.
Last Winston Cup champion. Nextel came in, but there was a big deal about the Matt Kenseth rule. We're going to change the point systems because we can't have a champion that does this.
Yeah.
But that's what the system was.
Yeah.
Did you ever take that personal? And let me say this, because and here's why I ask if you took it personal.
Yeah.
Because my dad won the championship under 6 or 7 different point systems.
Yeah.
And you just beat them in whatever the point system is. You play the game of what the point system is. And you beat them with that point system.
I didn't take it personal at all, and I don't know that it was so much, I don't know that it was so much what we did, to be honest with you. I really honestly think it was more of Brian taking over, being Winston's last year and bringing in a new telecom company, and Brian having all these big ideas to make it more like football or bring in new fans or make it splashier or get away from the original roots that it did for 50 years, right? Like, I really think it was more putting his stamp on things, right? Like, my dad's not running anymore, I'm running it now, and here's what we're going to do to move NASCAR forward into the next era. This is what we're going to do. So I really think it was way more about that.
It's funny because I remember that time, and for fans, they looked at it one way, but inside the sport, I think we looked at it the same way you did.
Yeah.
That, okay,
Yeah.
new sponsor, new direction, we're going to separate ourselves from Winston, so we're going to have a different point system. We're going to have a different system like that. And it is funny because Jeff and Dale, and we'll sit and talk about it, because all we talk about is this guy's got so many playoff points. This guy's on the bubble, and he's got to get this many points. In a time when win and you're in, and winning is the most important, points always supersedes the win, no matter where you're at.
Today's system is certainly different, right? Because you win a race and it's like, yeah, you want to go win more and stuff, but the urgency is not quite the same until you get toward the end, I think.
Yeah, and the pressure builds constantly all year long, the way it used to be. I mean, it was like, you get down to those last few races.
Yeah, I didn't sleep a lot the last month and a half of that season, really.
There's the 2003 NASCAR Winston Cup champion, Matt Kenseth, the final Winston Cup champion of the Winston era, in the final fall race here at the North Carolina Speedway.
So here we go. 2009 Daytona. I say it all the time. That's the only race that we run where it's not a winner. It's a champion.
Matt Kenseth in a backup car, slipping through for the lead, and now the victory in the rain-shortened Daytona 500.
I think as we talk here, you know, a short 7 or 8 years before that, you're almost headed back to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And then within a 10-year period, you're Rookie of the Year, you're a champion, and now you're a Daytona 500 champion. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, that was a really neat win. It's funny because that week down there for Speed Weeks it couldn't have went any worse. Like, it was just terrible. We were running bad, and that was, I think, the year before they paved the track, so the cars really had to handle. It was a miserable weekend. I mean, you can ask Katie about my psyche that weekend. But, you know, Elliott was leading, and Elliott Sadler, and I was behind him, and he had 2 or 3 teammates in the outside row, and he just moved up to the outside row, and I just passed him and cleared him, and it started raining.
Wasn't nothing Elliott Sadler could do there.
Nope.
Sadler opened the door.
Down, and as we say, you got to push, which means you're going to the front.
I might not even let a lap under green. I just passed him off at 2, and it started raining, and it took us all day to get there. But we had a great handling car, and they had great pit stops and great adjustments, and did all that, and we were able to pick our way through. So I always knew it was a big deal, and it was cool to win that race. But that next week shocked me, like all the fanfare and all the stuff you did. Like, it was almost as big as when we won the championship.
All right, you come back in 2012 and you do it again.
Matt Kenseth trying to win it for the second time. Here comes Junior to the outside. Side by side with Kenseth. He runs out of time. Matt Kenseth wins the Daytona 500.
The second one, obviously, now you have kids. Did that make that one, did that change that anyway, or was it still just, I mean, y'all were on fire on Speedway racing that year.
Yeah, we honestly, if I was better at what I did, we probably should have won all 4 of them. So that was with Jimmy Fenning, and he's really good at everything. Now, the coolest thing is we're staying in Victory Lane, and he looks at me, he's like, looking around, he's like, you know the last time I was here? I was like, when? He goes, 25 years ago with Bobby Allison, 1988.
No way.
25 years exactly from the last Daytona 500 he won to that one. And that says so much about him. Like, how do you run that many years in the sport and stay competitive and up with all the new technology and all the stuff going?
Okay.
Now you're going to talk about the one that I lost in the last corner?
Now we're going to talk about June of that year, 2012. You announced to the world that you're leaving Roush.
Surprise. He does have a sense of humor.
And I don't want to get into details, but was it just time for a change? How did that come? I mean, every driver, you get to a place.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, we want to get in details. I'd say a lot of things happened internally. I felt really bad for Jack, so it certainly had nothing to do with him. And I really wasn't planning on leaving. I was planning on staying there and retiring and stuff. And there's just a lot of things that happened, a lot of things that didn't happen. And just kind of made me see the path for me was to go do something different and try something else and see where it brought me. So there's just a lot of different changes there that happened that kind of set the stage for that. And it really most of it all happened, ironically, the week after the Daytona 500. We were in Vegas next week. There were some things that kind of got the ball rolling on that and kind of made me see more clearly that I wasn't really at the time sure that I wasn't a plan.
So you end up over at Joe Gibbs, and I will say, Gibbs was when Tony was there, it was one kind of team, and then it kind of for inside watching them, they didn't really have a leader. Then you went there, and Letard always calls you a franchise player. That you're the guy you can build a franchise around. My dad always said you were David Pearson reincarnated. You know what I mean? That you were, for his era, you had that style. You just won big races, you got it done, you won championships, you did that. When you went there that first year, it just clicked.
Heck yeah, boys! Woo! Yes! Thank you, Lord. Thank you for putting me here. Thanks, guys.
Not only did Matt Kenseth win a lot of races that first year, the whole organization seemed to move forward. Did you have a lot of input in that first year when you went there?
Well, I'd never like to take a lot of credit for anything, but there was a lot of things. So the 20 team was ready to win. They actually won a race with Joey that year with Jason being a rookie Cup crew chief. But when I came in there, you know, Jason and I were a really good fit right from the start. Denny and Kyle are very different from each other, but they're both extremely talented, just very, very different, which both helped me a tremendous amount because they were here, but they were both could win. So there was a few interesting things when I got there. I'll never forget the first meeting I came into. I would like to think that I helped make some things a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, it was obviously that was a really good year for us. It was really fun. It's very disappointing we didn't win the championship the way it turned out, but we ran really well. We won a bunch of races. We actually could have won a bunch more races and had problems. So it was a super magical year. It was great for my career and my confidence at that point in my career to kind of change things up and do something different. So yeah, that was really fun.
So you were there 4 years.
Actually, I was there 5.
5.
Wasn't
Okay.
I feel like I was.
Yeah, you were there. Listen, you would know.
I was hoping it would have been like 7 or something, but it was 5, I think.
Okay, there's my question. There's my question. You lead me into
I knew
it.
you were coming to
Okay, so when you did leave, and I look at it where you and Tony and Jeff, and I mean, there's a number of drivers. Kevin's still out there. Jimmy's still out there. Some of those guys that were there in the heyday of the sport. But in recent years, we've seen Hendrick replace a lot of his drivers with a William Byron and Alex Bowman. Not despairing those guys, but the price difference between a Matt Kenseth or a Jeff Gordon and a William Byron are two different things.
First of all, me and Jeff, I don't think I pay near the same. If he wants to go back and switch,
okay, that's good. But what I'm saying is that part of when you left after that period of time, did you look at it and say, well, he's throwing these guys in, or we're putting these guys in that have an upside? Obviously, they're 20.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But did you think part of it was financial?
Not in my case.
Yeah.
Not in my case.
Okay.
We never got to that point. So
Okay.
I came back and did a 1-year deal with them at a you know, substantially less money than my teammates were making, and took a pretty good cut. And I was okay with that because I know sponsorship wasn't the same as what it was. You'd have to ask Joe exactly why they did it. I guess, you know, they wanted to get Eric in there, a younger driver. You know, I was a little disappointed. I felt like I did help things there, you know, the first couple of years, especially a lot, get them flowing a little smoother. And you know, he did a lot for me, but I felt like I did a fair amount for him too. And he did say publicly before that I could race there as long as I want, which, you know, I didn't expect to run there when we ran really bad, but I felt like I could still had a few years left of running good and wouldn't have minded maybe doing a little bit different. But at the end of the day, he did everything he said he would do for me. You know, we had a contract until the end of 17, and he did everything he said he'd do for me and then some. And I don't really view it a lot different than when I left Roush, right? Like I had a contract to the end of 2012, and I did everything and then some what they asked of me till the end of 2012, and then we just didn't have a contract anymore, so I went to race somewhere else. So it's really no different. It's part of business. Yeah. I mean, I think when both parties aren't in 100% agreement what direction they want to go, of course somebody's going to be disappointed. That's just the way it is. But at the end of the day, you got to do what's, you know, best for your race team and best for the future of your company. That's something I understand.
So your last year you come back.
Did that make any sense?
That made perfect sense.
Okay.
That was a great answer.
That surprises me.
Not just a one-word answer too. So that was a great answer.
Oh, I forgot I was going to do that.
So you come back one more year and run for Jack.
Matt Kenseth making his return to the Cup Series, 46 years of age.
You know, the fans and the competition. The thing you miss the most is always the competition. I mean, that's why Will started racing on Friday and Saturday nights, you know, with a couple hundred people in the stands, and because you like to compete.
In some way, it was only fitting that your last year would be with Jack. I mean, honestly, for me especially, that's a personal thing. Just because that's who you are. That's who Mark Martin is. I mean, there's a couple of drivers that I identify. That's Jack Roush.
Yeah.
And they say you can't go home. Was it tough to go back over there?
It was really good to go back for a lot of different reasons, you know, but the main thing I think is I had that question in my head after 17, because everybody assumes like, okay, well, 17's over, you just didn't have any job offers, so you didn't go race. Somebody get Matt a car to race. Well, I had job offers. I just didn't really have anything there. I felt like I need to go do this full time. Maybe I need to, this is all happening for a reason, and I feel like this is telling me it's time for me to step away from this, because nothing really fell into place like was offered to me. It was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. I really want to go do that, right? And a couple things I was pretty interested in didn't work out. So I'm a firm believer in that, you have to work hard to get where you're at, but if you have to work too hard to make a deal happen or whatever, sometimes you try to force things. I think when you try to force things, it's probably not the right thing you need to be doing. So I think coming back and the part-time schedule and the way it happened, and I could come back and race for Jack again. We could kind of mend fences after leaving there after the 12 season, I think was all really, really great. But it was a good experience to come back. It probably made me realize it was probably time to stay away and be with my kids. Sitting in the hardest thing about racing for me is the last 3 or 4 years. The kids can't travel as much. Katie can't travel as much. I have 4 little girls at home. And as you know, when you're at the racetrack, you spend probably 90 to 95% of your time on Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, either sitting in a motorhome or a hotel room or going to, ride your bike or going to a movie or reading a book or doing whatever. There's just so much downtime. And, last year, I remember being in Indy and it rained all weekend and I couldn't get out of there. And Katie and the kids were up in Wisconsin hanging out with family and having fun. And you're seeing all these pictures and all these things you're missing, right? And Caitlin's 10 already. And I'm like, so if nothing else, it reinforced all that it's probably time to be home and be with your kids and just move on to the next phase of your life and put racing back there and a lot going on at home that I just don't want to miss.
Well, thanks for doing this today, man.
Yeah, no problem.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, man.